Today we have an illustrious guest, currently a graduate student at UGA's College of Education. This Spelman woman earned her Master's of Public Administration as well. She has served as a career coach and also a community field representative in the U.S. House of Representatives. And more recently, she is the current crown holder of the Miss Fulton County Scholarship Program. So she decides what is and what isn't Atlanta proper, okay? So without further ado, I'll turn it over to one of our very own to introduce himself to you, Christy, and then we'll just have a conversation. Maha?
Yes, thank you. Apologies for the background noise. Good afternoon, it's Christy Jones, and on behalf of our Public Health Careers and Professions class, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your day to talk to us about your background, experiences, and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is it Maha?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate it.
And so, Christy, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to UGA and wanting to pursue your PhD in education.
Sure. So first and foremost, again, my name is Christy T. Jones. I had the pleasure of serving as Miss Fulton County 2022, but more importantly, I'm a graduate student. I am currently pursuing a Ph.D. in Education, Administration, and Policy from the University of Georgia. And what really prompted me to pursue my Ph.D. Prior to being in grad school, pursuing my doctoral studies, I used to work in Cleveland, Ohio. I graduated from Spelman in 2017, and then I went to Cleveland to pursue a career in public service. And then while I was in Cleveland, I worked in human resources for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, which is the second largest school district in the state of Ohio. And being exposed to an entity of that magnitude, it gave me a lot of training in human resources and people development and career coaching. So one of the unique opportunities that I had during this opportunity at CMSD was the pleasure of coaching and training and providing professional development to education majors at Cleveland State University, Bowling Green State University, and Ohio University. And I kept meeting students who were from suburban backgrounds and who wanted to teach in urban schools, but had no idea of what to expect, and what they were taught in the classroom were just a lot of false information about urban schools and just students in these type of environments. They were taught that students in urban schools didn't have parents who cared about them, didn't have just a support system or people who wanted them to succeed. And I came from urban schools, so I knew that was simply just not true. And I was just really concerned about what was being taught in colleges of education and how teachers were being prepared to teach in urban schools. So I, out of rage and just pure frustration, I applied for my PhD program. And to another instance that encouraged me to apply for my PhD is I lost my job. So I was working for a higher education institution, and was forced to resign because I had a medical emergency that I had to attend to. And when that opportunity was taken from me, it made me realize how much I love working with students. It made me realize how passionate I was about just making sure students have what they need, helping them find jobs and helping them succeed. So I'm saying all this to say, life is filled with twists and turns, and you never know how you land in grad school or your dream career. Sometimes a no or a not right now can lead to a greater opportunity. So if I had not lost my job, I would have never had my platform for Miss Fulton County, which is centered around career awareness and preparedness and career exploration opportunities for college students and recent college graduates. So I really am thankful that opportunity happened, because I wouldn't have been in grad school and I wouldn't have been able to have this awesome opportunity.
Wow. When one door closes, another opens. that's a cliche term, and it doesn't make it any easier to get past that initial heartache. Nonetheless, you show how resiliency, but also a direction in that passion begins to shape where you want to head to. And so you're in your first year in your PhD program. Can you talk about the application process a little bit, or where you see your PhD degree sort of helping your career?
Sure. So that's a great question. So I knew that I always wanted to go to grad school, but honestly, I was just afraid. I didn't think that my voice would be valued in spaces like this. Sometimes I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't think I was capable enough. But I had people like Dr. Cormier, and just people who I saw who looked like me or who were just themselves in academic spaces, which was really encouraging. So I applied for the PhD in the middle of the pandemic. So after I lost my job, I was like, okay, what's next? So I was like, I know I want to work in higher ed, and my long-term goal is to be a college president. So I was like, in order to do that, I have to have a PhD. So I had to face this fear. So I reached out to my advisor from grad school. I went to Cleveland State to get my MPA, my Master's of Public Administration. And Dr. Hatch was just like, yeah, like you're a great candidate. So we went through my personal statement. Dr. Cormier also helped me with my personal statement too. So one is make sure you have a strong personal statement and you know why you want to go to grad school. There are a lot of people who go to grad school just because they want to be called a doctor. And, even though that's a great honor, it's so much work that goes into getting your PhD, and it's a time commitment. So you just want to make sure that you actually want to be there. And two, looking at the coursework of each institution that you apply to. PhDs are very competitive, and to get funding can be very challenging. I know for myself, I'm funded at UGA, but I applied other places I didn't get in. So UGA provided funding, but also it provided me opportunities to take classes from different departments too. So some of the classes I take a politics of education class, I take a schools and social policy class, education policy analysis, quantitative methods in higher education, quantitative methods, higher education 1 and 2, learning about regression and multiple and logistic regression, things of that nature. So really looking at the coursework and what it offers, and then also making sure that you are going to a place that you like to live. Like initially I wanted to go out of state, but I actually am glad that I have my family here with me as I'm doing my PhD, because you really need familiar support. You just need a support system. It may not come from family, it could be come from friends, but it's just sometimes doing the PhD can be an isolating experience. So you need people to kind of check in on you, make sure you're not living under a rock and you're actually doing what you need to do to be successful. So that's a little bit of how I applied. Now, in terms of the GRE, because it was a COVID year, the GRE was waived, so I didn't have to take it. But I already had a GRE score. I didn't submit it since we weren't required to. But the way I prepared for the GRE, I did a Kaplan course, which was very helpful and beneficial for me. So also making sure that you do well in the GRE. If you don't do well, it's not an end all be all. Like you could still get into grad school and get funding. It's just really about having a total package and being well rounded.
Yeah, we have a question.
Yes.
Hi, it's Leisha. I have a lot of questions now because you went over a lot of stuff. So, okay, about coursework. When you say getting a PhD requires a lot of time, when you're saying like, are you talking like volunteer time? Are you talking like coursework? Are you talking like class time? Like when you say, like, I need to understand when you say it takes a lot of time, because I was thinking it was going to be like school, just more school. So it's not just more school.
It is more school, but it's also, so I'm a graduate assistant, so I have to do research on top of that. So in undergrad, which you all are in undergrad, correct?
Right.
Okay, so in undergrad, your professor, you go to lecture, they tell you like kind of in your syllabus what you're going to talk about, and you have to write a paper, but it's on a certain topic. In graduate school, you're kind of in the pilot mode. So you take a class, but sometimes you have to read maybe about 20 chapters a week. You have to be able to discuss and understand the theories. You also have to be able to produce your own original research. So you take 2 years of classes, and a lot of times the classes are very specialized, and you also learn methodology. So methodology is basically there are two types. Well, it's several types of methodology, but the main two like umbrellas are quantitative and qualitative. And quantitative is more math-based research, so dealing with graphs and data and analyzing data, and a lot of times you use statistical software to do that. With qualitative research, it's more interviewing, small focus groups, kind of dealing with the people and seeing their behaviors and analyzing their behaviors. So when I say it's a lot of work, a lot of it's independent work, and you are basically kind of the pilot on your own educational journey. So when in undergrad and sometimes in master's programs too, where your teachers like tell you kind of explain everything in lecture and like kind of hold your hand. There's not really hand holding in grad school. It's kind of like you got into this point and you kind of have to take responsibility of cultivating your own knowledge. Like you still have a syllabus and all these things, but it's really about like what you want to learn. So you can create topics as vast as you want to. It's just really more about what you want to learn and what type of knowledge you want to produce. Does that make sense?
It does. Whew,
Okay.
okay. So with that, like in preparation, like did you take a break from the master's to the PhD, or did you just go boom right into it?
I took a break. So between each of my degrees, I took a break. And I love working. I just get a joy out of it. I like to work. So it was hard for me to decide. I'm like, okay, do I want to keep working or just go ahead and get my PhD? And my thing is, I didn't want to be like in my 40s, like trying to be in grad school. I'm 26, so I just wanted to get it out the way. So I did take a break, and I advise students, I think you should get work experience before going to grad school. Some people have different viewpoints. They think you should just go ahead and knock everything out. But I think it's nothing like actually working and getting some exposure to make sure that's the field you want to get into, because you don't ever want to enter a program and you're studying something that you're not really passionate about, or you're just there because you think it was just like undergrad and it's just undergrad 2.0. Like grad school, I saw on YouTube a YouTuber, I forgot their name, but they were like grad school is not 13th grade, like it's, or college is in 13th grade, and grad school is not grade 17. Like it's like you got to keep wanting to learn and wanting to develop yourself. So I definitely advise you take a break. I also advise you making sure you visit the school and you talk to the professors, because those are who are the people that you're going to spend time with the most. And like you don't really choose your cohort, but you can choose your advisors and who you really allow to pour into you. So it's just important that you do take those breaks and that you just give your time to breathe, and the school will always be there. Just you want to make sure that you're mentally whole and you can just really be a successful student.
Okay, great. Next. So
Okay.
you applied to multiple schools, but I only want to stay at Georgia State. And all of my professors keep telling me to apply at different schools. But when you said like you applied to different ones and you didn't get in, do they tell you why, or it's just like no?
You can ask. You can ask why you got in, why you didn't get in. I didn't ask. I probably should have. So I was just trying to. UGA was the first school I got into. Like I found out about UGA first, and to be honest with you, I wasn't really excited. I was just like, "Ah, I don't want to stay in Georgia. Like I wanted to go somewhere else." But it's funny because now I love it. But like with applying to PhDs, a lot of times they only accept 4 or 5 people a year because it's based on funding, or some places accept a lot of people, but everybody doesn't get funding. Like they accepted 5 of us, but only 2 of us got funding. Me and one of my colleagues, Capril, we were the only 2 who got funding. So apply to multiple places to because you wanted to get funding. Otherwise, you'll be thousands of dollars in debt, and you're just going to school like and just not having anything. Some people work a great job and they can afford to compensate for that. But I will always suggest, and just like Dr. Cormier suggests, like apply for those graduate research assistantships. Like get yourself exposure because when you leave your PhD program, people are going to ask, so like, what did you do besides study and do your dissertation? Like, how did you contribute to the college and contribute to the research of the school? So I would definitely suggest applying to.
Yes, to reiterate, she said, yes, apply to multiple schools, people. Let's not put our eggs all in one basket. You get into Georgia State, you get a GRA position, great, but it's not an option if you don't give yourself options. If the only thing you can do is also applying to multiple schools gives you a context for what some schools might emphasize while others don't. And so, and then really ask yourself, why is it, why do you want to stay at Georgia State? Georgia State's great for public health, right? You all see that. But why truly when somebody at Oglethorpe or Emory or UGA, their professors are doing exactly what you want to get skilled in. So, just sort of keep that in mind. And also with regards to the, is it just more classes? It's actually less classes, right, Christy? Because you're taking probably maybe 4 classes, while some of you all are taking 5, 6 classes. And instead of being able to regurgitate information or to give, basic critical analyses at the PhD level, that's already supposed to be assumed. Like she said, you already read half of the book before you came to class this week. We want to talk about what new information can be built upon this, these readings that we have for class. And so she's in the first year, so there are more classes to take. And she has her MPA. Which does your program accept your master's?
No, and if they did, they probably would have accepted my quant credits, which I probably wouldn't have even allowed them to because I wanted to just retake those to get some extra practice with methodology.
All right, so she's in this process, and as she hits these milestones, thesis, what's it called? Comprehensive exam. After the comprehensive exam, then she's pretty much done with classes. Then she'll start doing her dissertation. And all of this is building her to become a creator of knowledge and to explore some sort of phenomena that's, from a different perspective or a different topic. So, you're not just deep frying fries and, flipping burgers. She now has to come up with a whole new burger, to put on the menu, metaphorically speaking.
That's a great metaphor.
Okay. So when you say funding, can you elaborate a little bit on the funding part? Like, are you saying like they're paying for your whole PhD program funding, or this is a loan, or like how does the funding work?
So funding differs for each program. So with my program, my graduate assistantship, I get funding for 2 years, at least 2 years. I can get renewable funding, but it's kind of like I wouldn't even say probationary period, but like with my college, they just do it for the first 2 years. And then because all of our classes are at night, because it's catered towards like educators, so people who work in schools. Some like go into the school system, like they end up getting some type of research job where they work their last 2 years that contributes to their dissertation. But for my assistantship, it covers my tuition and fees. So I already have in-state tuition, so it covers all of my tuition and fees. I just have to pay for my student fees, and my it pays for half of my health insurance too. So
Mm.
basically, that's how much, and I don't mind disclosing. So my stipend is like 16,000 a year, and that's very low, like compared to other schools. Like a lot of other schools, they get paid like maybe $30,000 more livable wage. So on what I do from the side for additional income, like I write, oh, he's not in Georgia State. I write grants. That's how I make additional income, and I do career coaching. I help young students like find jobs. So that's how I make additional income. There are some people who do hair. Some people have landscaping businesses. You become very creative in grad school because it's like you are working towards your dreams, but you want to make sure that you also are able to do your livelihood. So that's what I mean by funding. There are some programs that when they say full funding, they mean tuition, fees. They give a living stipend. Some cover room and board, and they cover the whole nine. So it's a full scholarship, and they just expect you to produce research and assist for the graduate assistant. And typically, funding is for it depends. Mine is for 2 years. Some are for 4 to 5 or 6 years, but you always want to make sure you read your contract and make sure that you are aware of what funding opportunities are available. I did have to take out some loans to cover my living expenses because even though Athens rent is cheap, it's not that cheap. So I have to make sure that just my rent is covered for an additional things. But yeah, were there any other questions you had? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. I think I just have one more question because you and Dr. Cormier were just talking about did they accept your masters? What does he mean that they accept your masters?
So like some universities they will accept maybe like 12 credits or 15 credits of your master's program to go towards your PhD so you don't have to take as many classes. Because I was in a different discipline, even though it was policy related, but it wasn't education, um, I didn't have any classes that matched up with the curriculum that I was teaching, that I was learning. So they didn't accept any of my masters. And my program is a bit different because I don't get a master's en route to the PhD. It's just straight PhD because they do have a separate master's in education program and education policy, but for we don't get a master's en route. So we do our comprehensive exams, um then we do perspectives, and we do all of that, and then we start on our dissertation.
Okay. Hmm. This is bringing a little light because it sounded like it was real. Everybody else was making it sound like it was real sweet for you to just sign up for this PhD program once you get your master's, and it's just going to be like school. I figured it wasn't that simple. So thanks for
Oh
sharing
no.
that.
Yes, I mean only I think it's 1% or 2% of people have their PhDs. Like it's very, very, very small percentage. A lot of people start, but not a lot of people finish.
Yeah, but
And
then
also,
in public health, a lot of the jobs that you want, you need a PhD or you need 10 years of experience with a master's. So it kind of puts you in the corner with public health that you kind of got to do it to have a sustainable life in public health. That's what I've been noticing after looking at these careers. It's like, okay, so I got to get a PhD to make this work because if not, then it's not going to make any sense. So yeah,
and
thank you.
yeah, keep in mind that, like Christy said, with different programs, they're trying to line up the syllabi from her master's to their program. So it is a bit easier for an MPH to get into a PhD public health program and have that MPH received because, it's both public health programs. So that's also something to just consider if you all do consider going for your PhDs. If you want to get a PhD in business or in psychology and you already have an MPH, that's just something you just gotta keep in mind, make sure those things line up. Also, continue to work backwards. That people do make a living and make a career with an MPH, right? That is an applied degree. Some of the jobs you may be looking for are those higher up positions, which, yes, to be the preferred applicant for those higher up positions, PhDs or DRPH is likely going to be. And Christy, you have experience and you currently still do career coaching. What is something that you see frequently come up with regards to the people that you coach? Is it that they're nervous about networking, or they're not sure what they're going to do with their degree? What's some sort of common trait that or common issue that you have to tackle with some of the people you do career coaching with?
That's a great question. I would say it's both. One thing is deciding on a major and not finding jobs in your major, or having a job offer in a completely different field that has nothing to do with your major, which is so common. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about both. And then the other one is being afraid to utilize the network and not knowing how to reach out to people in your network when they're looking for a job. So the first with the major, so my major was international studies. Today, Spelman's founder today. So when I graduated from Spelman 5 years ago, my first job was in a school district, and it had nothing to do with with international relations. It had to do with human resources. So even though I had all these great opportunities when I was at Spelman, I interned for Congressman John Lewis. I worked as an intern with 21st Century Leaders. I worked with the Atlanta Mission. So I had opportunities with building relationships with people and developing people. But I was like, how is what I learned as an international studies major going to relate in HR? It just didn't make any sense to me. And I thought there was something wrong with me, because I'm like, my major has nothing to do with what I'm doing. And then I realized that's kind of the whole gamut of college. Like, a lot of times, I am very surprised when I find people who are actually working in a field that has to do with their major. Now, for tech people, that's more likely to happen because tech is so high in demand. But like, if you're a liberal arts major, 9 times out of 10, you will not work in a field that has to do with your major. So I always tell my students and my clients, I'm like, it's okay. You just have to be able to have those transferable skills. And it's okay. You have to pivot and have to like transform to create opportunities for yourself to ensure that you are just career ready, because you never know, your field might not be in demand anymore. You might not have there might be not be any jobs opening. We can have another pandemic, right? You just have to be prepared for anything. So a great example of that, when I lost my job, I was unemployed for 6 months and I never got an unemployment check. So I just started my career coaching business because that was a skill that I had, that I was good at, and I started grant writing. When I got my master's, I also got certification in nonprofit management, and I took grant writing classes, and I didn't realize how valuable of a skill that was. And so I started meeting like young Black nonprofit owners, and we're like, we need a grant writer. Like I had no experience. So she was like, okay, I'm going to charge you $25 an hour. And in my first year, I was awarded over $450,000 in grants, 446,000 to be exact. And I was just so surprised at like me taking a chance on myself. So always be able to develop and pivot, because you never know what you're going to need. And then my second point was knowing your network. Don't be humble and don't be afraid to ask people for help. When I was unemployed, to be honest with you, I didn't want to tell people. Like, I was so ashamed. I felt like I let people down because I was like, oh, I went to Spelman and I have a master's degree and I graduated early. Like, I'm supposed to have everything together. And I didn't want to tell my mentors or anything because I was just so embarrassed. The thing is, people who know you and care about you, they will bad for you. Like I remember Kate Hewitt, who's the executive director of 21st Century Leaders. Kate was connecting me with people in her network, like until I found a job working for Congressman David Scott. That's who I ended up working for after I was unemployed. She would check in on me every week. She was like, "Hey, have you seen this job? Have you seen that job?" And there are so many jobs out there, and sometimes, a lot of times, when people get jobs, it's not because they had the best application. It's because they knew someone who worked there. So you have to network in order to get what you want. It's no nobody has gotten here without anyone's help. And when people say that, it's not true. Like they may have had limited help, but somebody opened the door for them. So as long as you have people in your network and as long as you're willing to be resilient and pivot, then you can get a long way. But you just have to be willing to take that leap of faith.
So uh, we'll try to circle back to networking specifics if we have time. Let's talk about interviewing, right? Because not only did you, did you have to interview for your PhD program?
No, surprisingly, I didn't. No.
Okay. But for jobs, and I'm sure with your career coaching, you teach about interviewing, and with the Fulton County pageant, you had to interview. So can you talk about interviewing tips, words of encouragement for people who made it to that point, past the paperwork, and now they're asked to come in or do a digital virtual interview? Any suggestions and tips and faux pas you want to mention?
Yes. So first thing is, which I have to coach my students and clients, don't say if per my resume or it's on my resume in the interview, like, I know you're like, why is she saying this? Just as a hiring manager, because I used to hire like superintendents, chief academic officers, it's just a big no-no because the thing is, 9 times out of 10, some read the resume, some don't, but they want to meet you as a person. I said, and secondly, make sure that you are who you want to portray on paper. Like make sure that person, like that's really you, because a lot of people lie and it does catch up to you. Like if you weren't the manager and you were the assistant to the manager, like just say you were the assistant to the manager, because there are a lot of skills that assistants have that people in managerial positions don't possess, because a lot of times assistants do a bulk of the work. So don't be a title snob or like try to promote like having a certain title and think people are really impressed with that, because a lot of titles are nice, but if you didn't do any work, your work ethic speaks more volumes for you. And then another thing is make sure that you cater your resume and your application to the job you're applying for, because that's something that I struggled with when I first applied. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do a mass application today, copy paste. And the thing is, recruiters look at that and they're looking for certain words, kind of like what Dr. Cormier was saying with the graduate research assistantship. They're looking for certain words, and a lot of times it's a robot or it's not a human looking at the resume. It's like a computer. So they look up, they're like, did this person use the words that were on the job description on the job application? So make sure that I'm going to give everyone my contact information. Like you can set up a coaching session with me. The first one's free, and then I only charge $25 an hour for college students. So I teach my clients keywords, buzzwords to look at resumes. I do LinkedIn reviews. I do resume writing. All these things are so important, and I hate like that in the higher education system. Sometimes we have a lot of focus on like finishing the degree, but we don't talk a lot about the skills needed after you leave the gates of wherever you're graduating, because a lot of the supports and systems that you have in college, you don't have that in the real world. Or if you do, it comes with a great cost versus it being offered for free in your college. So take advantage of those things. Take advantage of mock interviews and actually preparing for interviews and not just going in there and winging it. Because I've seen a lot of people who they had this mentality. They're like, oh, I had a 4.0 GPA in undergrad and I was president of the debate club, and they kind of have this ego of who they were in college and think that's going to get them the job. And really, like, companies value humility. They value people who are themselves and who tell the truth and who give honest answers. So when you take that time to develop yourself, you take that time to really make sure that you have what you need to focus and concentrate, then you can get where you want to be. But it really does take those development of those fine-tuned skills.
Yeah. What is, like you've done, you've been on both sides of the interviewing table. Even to date, we'll start with the bad and the good. What are some things that even today stuck out to you as, oof, they shouldn't have done that? Maybe they shouldn't have said that or presented themselves in a certain way. What are some of the, maybe it was online or in person. What are some things that stood out to you that you even remember from doing interviews that, like, oof, like it doesn't even matter what your resume says, that wasn't you leading with your best foot or something like that?
One thing, appearance is everything. So professional attire. I know, like, we're in the new age and we feel like fashion is a way of expressing yourself. And while it is, when you are interviewing for a job, you're representing that company, and more importantly, you're representing yourself. So always dress professional, even if you're working at McDonald's. Like, always present yourself in a professional way, like, because people pay attention to that, and it shows that you care. Also, have always have questions for the job, because for the job interviewers and the company, because just as much as they are interviewing you, you are interviewing them as well. So a pet peeve of mine is, like, when I'm interviewing someone and they don't have any questions for me. Like, they're like, "Hey, do you have any questions for us?" "Nope, I'm all good." Like, no, don't ever do that. Always have questions. And then another thing is sending a thank you note to the recruiters. Like, that just shows that you are a caring, compassionate individual, and that's thoughtful and like a tidbit. And then something else that I would say is bad, like not having any research or knowledge about the company, like just coming into the interview blind, like not knowing their mission statement, not knowing the company's key priorities, not knowing like their main campaigns or main clients. If you have no knowledge of the company, like, how do you expect the interviewers to know all these things about you, and then you don't know anything about them? So you just have to make sure that you are prepared and that you have what you need to be successful. And then I would say something good. I would say people who have a sense of humor, not all, no problematic jokes, but like people who take things take things seriously, but also just have a genuine spirit. I think the more that you are yourself, the better prepared that you are. And then another thing is always having a copy of your resume with you. I know a lot of interviews are virtual now, but the ones that are in person, it's good to be prepared, because the HR team may not have printed interviews, or sometimes it's helpful to just have your resume with you when you're at the job, so you can look down or glance down in case you forget something. And the great thing about online interviews is that you can have your resume and your cover letter right there in front of you without the interviewers on the other side seeing anything. So those are some of the good and bad that I've seen. Oh, and a big no-no, like, make sure that you're on time for your interview. Like, that's a big thing, because, like, I know a lot of hiring managers and recruiters, if you're late, like, they will make a big deal of it, or they think that's kind of like your brand, and they may not hire you just for that reason. So just make sure that you're on time. We understand things happen, Atlanta traffic, Zoom issues, but just make sure that you are put your best foot forward.
Yeah, you bring up some great points regarding those follow-up emails. And you all can, if you know you have an interview, there's a drafts folder in your emails. You can start that email before the interview starts, and then you just fill it in with some tidbits from the actual conversation. I appreciate you all answering my question about X. That project you mentioned, that would be the starting point. I look forward to contributing to that or meeting the other team members, blah, blah, blah. And also with digital and with virtual and in-person interviews, the chat, our chat at least, you can upload files. So you can send a PDF of your resume, even if it is a virtual interview. And then also you want to have a printout of your couple printouts of your resume, because some people hop on to interviews being an interviewer, that day. Like, when a potential professor visits the School of Public Health, they ask all of us, hey, do you want to sit in on the lunch, meeting with this person and have questions for them? It helps, because some people just like, I've seen it.
Okay. The shower and go to the store because I just cut off the last apple.
Or the position.
Okay.
Say yes, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, just keep that in mind in
Happy
regards to
playing Minecraft in Andrew's office.
what can go on, right? Before I shift slight gears, any questions from the audience just yet? You can put them in the chat as well.
Kirsty, I have a question. My name is Jocelyn Hudson, by the way. I was just curious to know what would you recommend regarding follow-ups for, like, if you apply for positions, and a great deal of organizations will say, if you don't, we will contact you, don't contact us. What would you recommend in that, like, if you want to stand out as far as following up?
That's a great question. So what I do typically, LinkedIn is my best friend. I love LinkedIn so much. It's like one of my favorite social media sites. So when I'm applying to a position at a job I really like, I look at my LinkedIn network to see who already works there, and I ask about the culture of the company to that person. I tell them that I'm applying for a job, and any advice they have. And then typically what that person will do, they'll typically reach out to the person who's hiring and say, hey, I have this person applying for jobs. So that's one way. Another way is I would look at the job if it's posted on LinkedIn or wherever, and it usually says the department that it's in. So I would look up who's over that department, or maybe the assistant, and just reach out, send a friendly email. I would say give it about a week, because a lot of times when postings happen, we get hundreds of applications. And if you do it the next day, like, a lot of times we don't have time to review it. But I would give it a week and then follow up in the email. Just say, hi, my name is Jocelyn. I recently applied for this position. And just give a little short blurb about yourself. I'm in the School of Public Health at GSU. I'm interested in your company because X, Y, and Z. Would love to talk to you more about the position. Thanks. Have a great day. So that's one way to do it. But I would definitely suggest looking at your network to see if there's any buy-ins, or someone, maybe they don't work there currently, but they used to work there, so you can get some intel on how to best navigate.
Awesome. And one more question. Would you personally, or would you recommend attaching your resume to that follow-up email, or no?
I would. I don't think anything's wrong with that. Because sometimes, like, people will just open it automatically versus them going through your application. Because sometimes with application tracking systems, because I'm familiar with Workday, that's what we used. Sometimes it's hard to just go in one by one, and your name, there might be another Jocelyn Hudson, so we can get them confused. So I think it's a great idea to attach your resume.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, I can't
say
see
you
any of
need to
y'all
share.
beautiful faces. But I can't hate, because I'm the same way typically. But our classes at UGA are so small. Like, my largest class is 15 people. So we, like, kind of have to have our cameras on, but I understand it.
and make sure that if you're going to send a resume in your follow-up, make sure it's the same resume, and thus, even if it adds more files to your computer, company X, your last name, resume, just make sure you're sending the same one. You don't want to send a different, resume, that follow-up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, Miss Fulton County, like how did we get here? How did you find out about it? What gave you the encouragement to go for it? And how was that process you feel beneficial to you as a professional?
So it's been very beneficial. So the way this happened, I in 2020, I was going to do Miss Georgia USA, and I had lost about 30, 35 pounds, and I was like about 20 pounds from my goal weight. So I was going to go through these extraneous means, just diet and exercise, not surgery or anything, but to get to my goal weight. And I was working with a coach at the time, and he was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then when I lost my job and all that happened, I just took a break, and I have bipolar disorder. So I had a depressive episode, and I gained 40 pounds. I just wasn't feeling like myself at all. Just dealing with the depression from losing my job. So when I started at UGA, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a change. So I joined Weight Watchers. I lost about 25 pounds, 15 pounds in December, and then the other 10 in the new year. So I was just riding on the UGA bus, and they had a poster for the Miss UGA competition. And Carson Pennington, who's currently Miss Georgia, was Miss UGA before she won Miss Georgia. And I was like, I'm probably too old for that. Like, I'm pushing 26 years old. I said, why do I still want to do this? Because I wanted to be Miss Spelman. But I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, so I wasn't able to fulfill that dream. So I always had the pageant bug in me, but I kept suppressing it because I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why do I still want to do it? Not being a pageant title holder is stupid, but just to me, it felt dumb that this dream that I still had, like, just wouldn't go away. So I looked up over the Christmas break, like, sometimes my mind goes rampant, and I'm just like, let me just look up the Miss UGA pageant. So I saw that Carson, who is Miss Georgia, is currently a doctoral student. And I was like, what? I didn't know that doctoral students could compete for Miss UGA. And I didn't know it was under the Miss Georgia system. So I started looking up what other pageants were available. And at the time, the age was 18 to 25. So I was like, well, I can't do that anymore. But they changed it to 17 to 26. So I was like, okay, I have one more year. So the last opening was Miss Fulton County. And I was like, okay, Miss UGA was coming over Miss Fulton County. I was like, I love UGA. I love my school. But if someone asked me, what's my favorite place on campus, I would probably say my apartment, because I don't know the campus like that. And I feel like I wouldn't be the best representative of UGA. So I competed for Miss Fulton County, and initially I only had 3 weeks to prepare. And the pageant ended up being virtual. So we had to do our entire competition online. So I got a studio, I got professional sound equipment and everything. I did my talent, my interview, my red carpet walk, all on Zoom. So I didn't see any of the other contestants compete. So when they announced my name, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't think I was gonna win. I put a lot of work into it, and this is something I really wanted, but I just didn't think it was gonna happen. I didn't think it was in the cards, but I just gave it a God, and I was like, if this is your will, then so be it. And it was. So I'll be competing for Miss Georgia in June. And the reason I want to be Miss Georgia, one, is to promote career readiness and exploration opportunities for
already.
You said what now?
Giving us your speech already, huh? Go ahead now.
Yeah, I have to. So the reason I want to be Miss Georgia is I want to promote career exploration and career awareness for college students, because like people like me, a lot of young adults are more likely to lose their jobs or be fired first than older adults within corporations. So I really want to prepare students to advocate for themselves in the workplace, fight for workplace equity, as well as mental health in the workplace. So I do that through my career exploration sessions with Miss Fulton County. So on Thursdays, typically the second and fourth Thursday of each month, I interview different young women and women leaders throughout the state of Georgia and talk about their experiences, some things they wish they would have known when they're younger, and how to get into their field, just to provide exploration. And in addition to that, I do career coaching. And one of my goals, I do want to host a career fair for young adults specifically, just to provide them with exposure. But in addition to that, there are not a lot of people, there hasn't really been a Miss Georgia like me, one who is full figured, someone who is bipolar. Like, I have a lot of things that in most instances would count me out, but I think I truly represent Georgia, and I represent South Fulton. I represent a lot of people who have been silence. I just really want to use the platform for Miss Georgia to advance my platform, but also just to show young girls and young women that they can do anything that they put their mind to, and things that they would consider to be barriers are actually blessings that can be used to inspire other people. So that's why I want to be Miss Georgia, and we compete in June. So it's only 2 months away. So it's 51 of us competing for Miss Georgia, and then we have Miss Georgia's Outstanding Teen. So it's about 48 girls competing for that. So it's a great opportunity. If any of you are interested in competing next year, I would love to talk to you about the process. It's been such a great opportunity to just talk to different audiences about my platform and just be a representative of the county that I call home.
Wow, and best wishes to you for that. I think that platform, no bias. I think that platform of career preparation, career readiness can resonate not only with the young people, would be your target audience for for your events, but also their parents as well. Because, in Georgia, let me not get on too much of a tangent, but within Georgia, you got to choose if you're going to be college prep or trade school or vocation, like in middle school or high school. And without exposure, the vast array of opportunities, some people realistically are making choices because of what their parents are telling them to do, or because of what they're, not seeing within representation. And so a platform like that really resonate again, not only your population, but also parents and people younger, like actual teenagers. With the how was that process trying to prepare? Because I'm assuming they did that thing where they ask you questions on the spot and you got to come up with the level answer. How was preparing for that kind of interview process?
It's so different from job interviews. And I think a lot of people think pageantry, some people think it's shallow. Some people think like the girls competing are not intelligent, which is completely untrue. Like, we have veterinarians, we have people who are aspiring to be doctors and lawyers and college professors, like some of the smartest women that you'll ever meet. And they ask questions about critical race theory. My question asked about the responsibility of journalists and journalistic integrity in the COVID era. So they ask very hard questions, and you only have 30 seconds to answer. So it's very challenging. Like, you have to just be prepared, like, for anything. And I have two coaches. I have Reggie Lewis and PR pageant coaches. So I have to coach and just be prepared. And like the ways we prepare is like listening to the news, listening to NPR, because like they may ask you about Ukraine and Russia. They may ask you about some of President Biden's agenda. So it's very different. And I think something, as you all can probably tell, just being a PhD student and having to give robust answers all the time, I had to tone it down, and not dumb myself down, but like learning how to curtail my answers to a more broader audience, which has actually helped me be a better PhD student, because when you have your PhD, you're an expert in a specific field, so you should know how to talk about complex topics to a general audience, because really the research we're producing is not just to share it with other academics. Like, good research is shared with the masses and understood by the masses. And I think a lot of people sway away from like academic writing and reading academic articles because they're boring, or they just don't see the value in it. Versus like me as a researcher and as a title holder, I just want to make sure that I'm accessible and that people understand my research, and that my research is understood by the masses. So it's really helped me become a better orator, and just making sure that I'm succinct and explain what needs to be explained in a more succinct amount of time.
Great answer. Like you said, the pageant thing, it's not technically directly related to your degree or your career per se, but it was something in your head that's part of the passion. What advice you give for my students who, they're in school, but they have this little passion thing that's on the side? It's a hobby. They like to sing, or, do community work, or mentoring, or, something that's on the side. It might not be something they consider a side hustle. It's just something they want to pursue out of a hobby or just a general interest. What advice do you have for those students that have this type thing that, not dealing with public health, but, they're thinking maybe they should just get rid of it and be an adult and just focus on one thing? What advice do you have for them?
Yes, I would say to allow your passion to pursue your purpose. Like, school is important, it's fine and dandy. I'm a nerd, I love school, but like without something to keep you grounded, or just cultivating that hobby, or that something that you're passionate about, you'll be miserable. Like, your entire life can't just be work. Even though hard work is a part of everything, you have to make sure that you are having time to cultivate your interests and cultivate things that really allow you to prove your creative side, or something that allows you to just serve your community and give back to others, whether that be a business, whether it be a hobby, or whether that just be you doing community service. It's important that you have those passions, because sometimes it'll just eat you up inside, and you don't want to be old and gray talking about, oh, I should have did this, or I should have done that. Like, you use the opportunities and connections that you have now. And if there's an opportunity that you want, but it doesn't seem accessible or attainable, or may not, you don't think you can afford it, there are ways to still pursue your dreams, even if you may not have the income for it. Like, you might have started a savings fund, or you might work toward, like, if you want to travel and, be an influencer, you can still do that. It might take some more time, and might take some sacrifice, but you can do anything you put your mind to. I know that's cliche, but I think the more people who take time to cultivate their interest and what's in their hearts, like, the better off you'll be. So, you have a job, you have your livelihood, but what else fuels you? What's your reason of waking up each morning? So, you should have things that allow you to just cultivate you and cultivate your growth, because you'll just become a better person for it.
Thank you so much. Let's have one of our very own give the thank you on behalf of the class.
Thank you so much for coming to our class today, Miss Christy Jones. I had such an awesome time hearing about your experience and your road to success in life. And on behalf of the class, we thank you so much for coming to speak with us. And I hope you have a wonderful day.